The wind howled like a warning. Kael stood at the edge of the valley of dust, his cloak snapping behind him, the whispering blade glowing with divine fire in his grip. Behind him, Zima adjusted her daggers. Damu set his final arrow to rest in. His quiver and Shehot, the serpent, slithered across the sandstone in a low, protective coil. Before them stood the sun-gaten ancient altar of stone, rising from the center of a wide basin carved by time and power. Its pillars reached skyward, like fingers of the gods, carved with symbols of cosmic law. At the top of the gate blazed the eye of Anubis, a massive obsidian orb now glowing as the sun and stars began to align in eerie perfection. And at the center of the altar, wrapped in shadows, stood Rahotep. He was no longer man. His flesh, twisted and stretched, gleamed with dark godlight. The crown of Setak burned upon his skull, fused into his bones. From his back-stretched ethereal wings, fractured and jagged, like glass made from night. His voice echoed with something older than death as he turned to greet them. "So," he hissed, "the last whisper comes crawling through the sand." Kael said nothing. He stepped forward. Rahotep's smile was crooked. "Do you come to beg, Kael, or to die with dignity?" "I come," Kael said, "unsheathing the blade to restore the balance you've broken." Lightning cracked across the sky, though no storm had formed. The ground trembled. Rahotep raised his hands. From behind the pillars, from cracks in the earth, the dead began to rise, limbs bound in gold, mouths stitched shut, eyes blazing with the fury of stolen souls. Zima cursed. Damu lifted his bow, but Kael raised a hand. "This is mine." He stepped into the circle, and as he did, the altar flared with golden light. The blade in his hand responded, awakening fully, singing with the voices of the forgotten gods. Rahotep growled, "You would face a god with a whisper." "No," Kael said softly. With truth, they clashed. Steel met corrupted energy in a shower of sparks and ancient magic. Rahotep struck like a storm, each blow shaking the pillars, his dark crown channeling power from the convergence above. But Kael moved with purpose, not rage. Each parry was precise, each strike a counterweight to chaos. Their duel tore across. The altar, the blade whispered truths as it cut. He murdered the balance. "He wears power, but it does not fit him. He fears you," Rahotep screamed in frustration. He lifted his hand and sent a surge of black flame toward Kael. Destructive energy. Kael was thrown backward, skidding across the stone. Blood stained his tunic. Rahotep walked toward him, triumphant. "You are nothing but a boy holding a memory." Kael looked up, barely able to breathe. But he smiled. "And you," he said, "are a man trying to be a god." He dropped the blade. Rahotep froze. The blade clattered on the stone, silent. The light dimmed. Kael rose to his knees, hands open. "I don't strike for vengeance. I won't kill you to silence the past." The stars shifted above them. The eye of Anubis shined brighter. "I strike," Kael whispered, "for balance." The blade lifted itself, rising on a column of light. Semet appeared behind it, spectral and radiant. Mat stood in the sky, wings spread wide. The blade chose dotted, flew striking through Rahotep's chest like lightning through a tree. He howled, his body unraveling in a storm of fire and shadows. The crown shattered, the wings burned. His god ascent screamed as it was torn from his soul. Rahotep fell, smoke pouring from his mouth. His form no longer twisted, but broken, human, mortal. Ashdod's silence returned. Kael stumbled forward and caught the blade as it returned to his hand, now cool, silent, its whispers at peace. The convergence passed, the eye dimmed, the balance restored. Zima and Damu helped Kael down from the altar. The sky cleared. The wind stilled. Shahat coiled around the fallen bones of the dead, then vanished into the sand, her purpose fulfilled. Epilogue. Weeks passed. Kael stood at the edge of a quiet village, watching children play beside a well. The world felt lighter, the skies less angry. The gods no longer stirred in torment. Zima had returned to the cities to rebuild forgotten temples. Damu rode south to his homeland, bearing stories of the whisperer of balance. Kael walked alone, no but not burdened. He carried no crown, no throne, just the blade sheathed at his back and the voice of Mat in his heart. As he passed the village, someone asked, "Who is that?" An old man smiled. "That is Kael, the one who listens when the world forgets, the one who whispers what is right." Kael kept walking, the desert stretching before him like a story not yet finished. Across the northern dunes, the sun set like a blood-soaked coin. But in the city of Kerith, darkness had already taken root. Rahotep stood upon a ziggurat of bone and obsidian, his arms stretched wide as chants echoed across the dead streets. Around him, once living villagers knelt in hollow silences, glowing with sickly green fire, mouths sewn shut with golden thread. They were not alive, nor truly dead. Rahotep's flesh was no longer his own. Veins of black stone traced across, his body like cracks in ancient pottery. A crown fused to his skull pulsed with the corrupted essence of a forgotten god Setek, the devourer of order. He turned to the priests behind him. "The convergence is close," he said, his voice deep and layered, like to speaking at once. "When the sun aligns with the eye of Anubis, no god, no man, no blade will stop me." Far from Kerith, Kael sat before a dying fire beneath a crumbled pillar. Beside him sat Zima, a priestess thief, with eyes like river stones and fingers quick enough to steal a man's belt while shaking his hand. Across the fire was Damu, a giant of a man exiled from the Nubian highlands, his bow taller than most children, and his voice quieter than death itself. And coiled near Kael's feet, purring like a cat despite its massive fangs, lay Shahat, a sand serpent he had freed from one of the temple's traps. It followed him now, bound by ancient magic and something stranger, loyalty. Zima broke the silence. "You're sure it's him?" Kael nodded. "Rahotep wears Setek's crown. He plans to ascend at the solar convergence 3 nights from now." Damu grunted. "That blade of yours better sing loud, friend. His army already marches." Kael looked down at the whispering blade. It shimmered faintly, whispering things he couldn't yet understand, memories, warnings, truths. "We don't need to fight the army," he said. "We need to reach the sun gate before Rahotep does." Frowned. "That gate's buried in the valley of dust. No one's gone near it in generations." "Then we'll be the first," Kael replied. The journey was merciless. The sun burned by day, the cold sliced at night. But the 3 warriors and their serpent crossed forgotten roads, ruins swallowed by time, and dunes that howled with ancient voices in the valley's heart. They found what Kael had feared, one of Rahotep's scouting parties. Reanimated soldiers, mouths sewn, limbs fused with black iron, eyes glowing with godfire. A battle erupted in silence. Damu's arrows struck like thunder, piercing bone and spell alike. Zima moved like wind, blades flashing, vanishing into shadow, and reappearing behind her foes. Kael moved with the blade, no longer a warrior, but an extension of something older. The whispering blade cut through magic and bone alike. With each strike, the whispers grew louder, closer, closer. He feels you. The last of the undead fell. Kael approached a priest dying in the sand, still barely breathing. Eyes wide with terror, lips moving in a rasp. He sees you, in the blade. You are the last scale, and he will break you. Kael placed a hand on the man's chest. Where is he? The priest trembled. The gate, already awake. He drinks its power. You are too late. He died with a sigh. Kael stood, eyes hard. We're not too late, he said. We're just in time. That night, they camped just outside the Valley of Dust. Kael couldn't sleep. Visions surged in his mind. Rahotep standing before the gods, mocking them, draining their essence into his crown. The balance tipping further and further, like a scale pushed by a cruel child. Then Mat appeared in the dream. Tall, radiant, her eyes blindfolded, her wings of light wrapped around the world. The blade remembers, she said. But you must choose. Kael swallowed. Choose what? To strike, or to forgive? I can't forgive him. Then do not. But do not strike for vengeance. Strike for the world. She placed a feather in his hand. It turned into ash. Kael awoke with resolve. The stars above began to shift. The solar convergence had begun. Only one night remained. Kael walked deeper into the temple's winding core, blade in hand, heart in conflict. The walls pulsed with ancient energy symbols, shifting subtly, almost breathing. Every step forward stirred echoes of 1,000 years. The scent of incense long faded clung to the air, mixed with the earthy scent of old dust and dried blood. The whispering blade vibrated gently in his grip, as if sensing the memories buried within these walls. He passed murals of celestial beings, locked in battle gods and monsters indistinguishable in form, waging a war not of light and darkness, but of imbalance and order. In one scene, Mat stood blindfolded, holding a scale that bled. Kael paused. The painting beside it depicted a man with a shrouded face, his face kneeling with the blade before her. Around him stood other guardians, each holding relics, a staff, a ring, a scepter, a crown, all sworn to keep balance, all gone now, as Kael reached the inner sanctum. A cold wind burst from the shadows, not natural wind, but breath. He turned. Blade raised. A figure stepped from the gloom, robes flowing like water. She did not walk. She glided, her feet inches above the stone, eyes glowing gold, skin like bronze flame, hair braided with beads of lapis lazuli. Sah met not the goddess of war. This was the spirit of the blade, its protector. You enter bearing judgment, she said, voice echoing in the chamber's bones. Kael stood tall. I enter bearing truth. Semet circled him, eyeing the blade, the scars beneath his robe, the shadow clinging to his soul. You were born of the line of Ketra, guardians of the threshold. Why did you flee when the world bled? Kael clenched, his jaw. I was a boy. I had no power. You had choice, she said, and you chose silence. Anger rose in his chest. They died. My family, my brothers, all of them. Rahotep came like a plague, and he faltered. Semet stopped before him, her eyes softened. And now you return, seeking to fix what was never yours to break. No, he whispered, I come to stop him from breaking more. The silence that followed was long and thick. Then she raised a hand. The ground beneath Kael's feet split open. Down he fell into darkness, into memory, a trial of flame. He stood in the past, a child again, running through the village on the day of its burning. Screams tore through the air. Fire leaped from hut to hut. His father's arms wide shielded him from an arrow of black flame. Kael screamed, reached out, couldn't reach him in time. Then another memory, older now, kneeling before a shrine, swearing he would never wield the blade, that he would bury the past, that balance could rot. Another voice spoke his mother's. Balance is not peace, it is truth, and truth cuts. Kael gasped as he was thrown from the vision, now back in the sanctum, flat on his knees, shaking. Samet stood above him. You carry the pain, she said, but the blade will not answer pain. He looked up, broken open. Then what will it answer? Conviction. She lifted her hand. The blade shimmered. Its metal etched itself with new sigils, his sigils. You may carry it, she said, but its judgment will be your own. The temple trembled. Distant thunder rolled through the stone. Rahotep rises, she said. He wears the mask of gods. If he completes the rite, the scales will fracture. The world will forget truth. Kael stood slowly. His face was no longer shadowed in doubt. Then I will remind them. Samet nodded once. Go, follow the echoes. Seek the crown buried in flesh. What is it? He asked. But she was already fading into dust as he emerged back into the sunlight. The sandstorm had grown fierce, ripping at his cloak. But Kael was no longer unsure. The blade whispered to him, and this time he listened. He was no longer a broken guardian. He was a judge walking the path of gods. The desert didn't whisper, it remembered. And in those grains of scorched memory, Kael walked alone. His boots sank into the burning dunes, as if the sands themselves tried to hold him back. The sun above was merciless, yet Kael's hooded cloak clung tightly to his frame, veiling his face from both the sun and the memories. Somewhere beneath his ribs, his heart beat to the rhythm of a vow long broken. He had sworn never to return. The wind shifted, kicking up dust devils that danced like ancient spirits. Kael paused, narrowing his eyes at the horizon. Far ahead, half buried in time, the Temple of Thorns pierced the desert like a bone through its obsidian pillars, jutting up, cracked, wrapped in faded hieroglyphs. He unslung the blade at his hip, worn, curved, etched with a single name, Kael in the old tongue. Not a warrior's mark, a guardian's. 10 years ago, he had fled the sands. 10 years since Rahotep raided his village, burned his father alive, and stole the sacred relics of their order. The guardians of balance were wiped out in a single night. Kael had survived not out of courage, but because he ran. Now the dreams had returned, visions of fire-licking temple walls, a blade singing in forgotten tongues, and the gods calling his name. He hadn't wanted to listen, but the map changed. That it was found buried beneath the bones of a jackal, wrapped in crimson cloth, in a market where nothing should have been ancient. The merchant had called him cursed and begged him not to open it. He had opened it anyway. It wasn't a map in the usual sense, it was a memory, drawn in layered lines of gold, only visible in moonlight. It showed a passage beneath the dunes, a forgotten entrance to the Temple of Thorns, and at its center, the sigil of Matha, goddess of truth and cosmic balance. The very same sigil his mother once carved into his palm as he neared the temple. Shadows began to shift. The air grew heavier, not hotter, as though the very world held its breath. Kael crouched before the great stone gate. Its surface shimmered faintly wards of old magic. His hand reached out instinctively, tracing the symbol once burned into him. The door rumbled. Sand fell from its seams. The passage opened not with sound, but with breath, a slow exhale of ancient air that hadn't touched the sky in a millennium. Inside, the light dimmed. The chamber swallowed him whole. Every wall was carved, floor to ceiling, with hieroglyphs depictions of gods, wars, stars, and blood. At the center stood a dais. Upon it, a sculpture of a blade pointed downward, plunged into stone. The whispering blade. He stepped closer. As his hand neared it, a voice, soft as drifting sand, whispered, "Do you seek vengeance or balance?" Kael froze. The blade shimmered faintly, like metal made from moonlight. "I seek answers," he said, voice hoarse. "Then listen." The whisper replied, and he did. Visions flooded him, flashes of Rahotep, cloaked in crimson, chanting before a black sun, his flesh changing, his eyes glowing with godlights. An army rising behind him, soulless, endless, bound by necrotic chains. Villages burning, rivers drying, the world choking on dust. Kael collapsed to his knees. The voice continued, "Rahotep seeks to tip the scale. The blade awakens for balance, not blood." He looked up at the sculpture. His hand reached, trembling, and wrapped around the hilt. The stone cracked. The temple trembled. As Kael rose with the blade now in his grasp, he felt something settle inside him. A cold flame. Not rage, not revenge, but purpose. The sands had remembered him now. It was time for the world to do the same.